Ultra Life with Brian Beckstead. Disrupting an industry is not an easy task, but then again, neither is running 100 miles. But that didn't stop a couple of guys from Orem, Utah from doing both. Growing up at the base of Mount Timpanogas, these cross-country kids spent their youth working at their local running store. After struggling with their own shoe dilemmas, the experimenting began, and the idea of a form-fitting, zero-drop shoe was born. After trying to give away the idea to the top shoe companies and being turned down by all of them, they were so sure that they had something good, this trio decided to do it on their own. And the result is a shoe company that has completely changed the game, redesigning footwear for the endurance community. Altra Shoes not only created a cult-like following, but also found a home with the greater population. Creating a shoe that is actually in the shape of a foot and accounting for the slower gait of distance runners, Altra Shoes inadvertently began appealing to the masses, and the more casual runners have been buying them in droves. The resulting explosive growth and religious following over the past decade has proven that these guys really have changed the game. But in the process, the game changed for Brian as well. Going from college grad to company president in an incredibly short amount of time, he had to develop the leadership skills to grow this company to scale despite very little background or executive training. But he was up for the challenge and saw the company continue to grow as a result. But despite all their success and the explosive growth, Brian found himself in a bit of a tailspin with the purchase and relocation of the company. With his life now in limbo and his company in flux, Brian did the one thing that he had always struggled to do: ask for help, both with the business but also for himself. And in doing so, not only did he get the help that he needed, but he was able to finally take the time to craft the lifestyle that he had strayed away from. He reevaluated his life, figured out what he wanted, and asked for it. Now, Brian has turned the page. He has a new role within the company and lives life on his terms, creating a lifestyle that we can all be envious of. Hear all about his journey, ultra racing, and some cool fishing stories. Check out how he has created an ultra life in my recent conversation with the co-founder of Altra Shoes, Brian Beckstead.
Having to pick up the bus at 7 a.m., but my wave doesn't start till like 10:30, and I'm never going to be able to run fast, and so I'm always like, I can run to start that fast. So I do. Every year I do a double Boston, so I do 52.4 miles of Boston every year.
No way.
Yeah. In the last 8 years, I've done Boston 6 times, and 5 of those times have been the double Boston. So
that's something else.
Yep. And then I've got Timp Trail Marathon in May, which is an awesome marathon right here. Like, it starts a mile from where we're at right now, and it's just an awesome trail marathon.
I was gonna say, dude, we are at the base of Timpanogas, man. Like,
right.
When I was coming in the first time from the interstate, coming from the north side, you don't notice it as much. But then when I was coming back from the music store, like, I was right on that main drive,
and you're like,
boom,
yeah, so it's
right at
cool.
you.
Yeah,
so amazing.
So, and then June, I'm doing the Twisted Fork 67K. So it's like 41, 42 miles. That's actually in Park City. And since I just moved there, I don't really know the section of trail. I've only run 13 miles of the 42 miles. So that's going to be fun. It runs, it starts right close to Round Valley, but it actually runs north of the freeway.
Huh.
So the main freeway that comes
cross
in.
over before
you actually start, literally, the first half mile is on asphalt, and you run underneath on a running pathway underneath the freeway,
and then you get out,
and then you go up and do like this huge figure 8, and then you finish. So there's like less than a mile on asphalt,
right?
And I think they said there's like 4 or 5 miles of dirt road, and then 35 miles of single track.
Nice.
So that'll be fun. I'm really excited to learn some of my new local trails, I guess, because I know these trails here super well.
Because you've been in Orem for so long.
Because I've lived, born and raised. Born and raised. But I know about some of the Park City trails, but then there's a bunch of them I don't know. So I'm excited to discover those and rediscover some of the old trails that I used to run.
You've really loaded up a pretty full schedule this year for racing.
Not really.
Feels like.
No. Compared to the last 2 years,
Yeah,
yes.
I guess in comparison.
But like compared to 5
you were
years or
before
10 years or even 15 years ago, that's pretty mellow.
Getting back to normal, really.
Yeah, exactly. I'm getting back to normal.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, let's kick things off. This is the Extraordinary Podcast, and my guest today is Brian Beckstead.
Hey, how we doing?
How's it going, man?
Dude, I'm so good.
Where are we at? What are we doing?
All right. Well, we're here in Orem, Utah, right at the base of Mount Timpanogas. We're in our old offices for Altra, kind of the basement office and where we started it, and we're kind of coming full circle here.
I was just gonna say, coming full circle. This is the original spot, and now you've been in a couple of different locations, and the main headquarters are now up in Colorado.
In Denver, yep.
Now y'all have come back around and got your own little spot back in Orem again.
Yeah, a little office here.
We got to have an amazing day yesterday, so I want to talk about that just for a second before we dive into everything and just say thanks for what a cool experience that we got to do yesterday. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I have a bunch of hobbies. My favorite hobbies, trail running, fly fishing, and skiing. And so I took you fly fishing.
We had all three on the agenda.
We were like, okay, which of these three are we going to do? And
fly fishing is the one that worked out the best.
That's the one that worked out, yep.
And what an amazing day. I mean, I don't think that we could have asked for a better set of circumstances. I mean, it was a beautiful day. The sun was shining. And, it just didn't get much better than that.
We got you into a big brown trout.
Yeah, and I got pictures to prove it. And,
that's right.
Right. That was the first thing to go up on social media. I had to tote that for sure. But it would have been a great day not catching a thing like we were talking about yesterday. I mean, it was just such an ideal day. The fishing was like, kind of like, the fact that I got to catch a really awesome fish was almost just like an added bonus. But
absolutely, it was good.
It was a great day, man. So I thank you for having me out there to have that experience, man. That was really cool.
Thanks.
So let's jump right into it, man. Altra Shoes.
Yeah, Altra.
The ultra running world's monolith.
Yeah.
What you've become.
Yeah.
Over the last decade.
Yep.
So most people that are going to listen to this already kind of know some of the background of you guys and you and Golden and how y'all got started with it all. But let's recap just briefly for those who don't know kind of the grassroots, how it first got started in the very early days with you guys.
Yeah. So I met Golden the first day of high school, and we ran together all in high school and even a little bit in college as well, and have just been friends since we were 15 years old. I started working at his dad's running store when I was 16 as well, so I've now been in the footwear industry for 22 years.
And which they're still around today? You want to give them a
shout
out?
We're a couple miles from here, so maybe afterwards I'll take you over there. It's called Runner's Corner. It's a great little store.
Yeah.
And we just were super runner dorks, high school and college. We both ended up in degrees, slightly different degrees, but basically in exercise science. And mine was more outdoor rec, and his was more fitness and wellness based. But anyway, we were working at the store, managing it, and we just always kind of were selling lighter weight, more flexible shoes to people, and we were always sizing people up bigger than anybody else in the industry. Everyone's like, oh, you might want to go up a half a size. And we were like, we'll go up a full size. And we were wide lacing the shoes, and every single person that came into the store, we would actually watch them run, and not just like a video of the close-up of their feet of whatever pronation, right? Which is a whole nother topic we can get into later.
Yeah,
maybe,
we might dive into that
one pronation's, it's not a bad thing. Pronation's great, so it's been demonized, unfortunately, in the industry. And so anyway, we felt that the industry was just not going the right direction. Everything was motion control and stability, and we just felt, man, your feet can be healthier and stronger in lighter weight, more flexible footwear. And so we were always kind of fighting with the industry a little bit, and we were, a couple young 20-year-old somethings. And then one day Golden had this idea of taking out the heel of a shoe. And so he put it in a toaster oven, heated it up, and then cut off the heel to soften up the midsole. And so it worked, and all of a sudden his biomechanics, his running technique was a lot better. It's more along the lines of what we'd been coaching people to do for the past decade, and it was closer to how someone would run without shoes. Not that we're like a minimalist or barefoot company, but there is some good philosophies that come from it. Primarily biomechanics tends to be a lot better actually. And so we wanted the benefits of modern footwear with the benefits of more natural positioning. And that's when Golden called me up and was like, hey, I've been, hacking up these shoes. And so we started almost, I guess, petitioning the shoe industry to make our shoes. And we called the term zero drop. It's a term that Golden came up with. And so we gave our idea of a zero drop foot-shaped shoe to other shoe brands. We had meetings with shoe designers, sales reps, sales managers, trying to say, we just work retail.
Yeah.
Would you build us the shoe?
Just literally giving
We are
the
diehard
idea
runners.
away.
We're dorky runners. We work retail. We literally gave them the idea for free, and a couple of them were polite, and a couple of them were actually quite rude, saying, "You guys are crazy."
But none of them had
none of them. And
least.
that's when the third founder, Jeremy Howlett, said to Golden, "Well, why don't you start a shoe company over this?" And that started a whole series of discussions. And next thing we know, that we're trying to get funding, and all of a sudden we have a shoe company. We had no money, no business experience.
I was gonna say, just a couple of young guns.
All
three of
us were in our 20s,
hoping a prayer.
And we made it work. We were really, really lucky in finding an early angel investor. I then took out a mortgage on my dad's house. And my dad said, well, this is your inheritance, so if you don't pay me back, then you get nothing when I die. So I risked that, and we just were able to really start from scratch when it comes to footwear. We didn't have any other baggage. A traditional shoe company can't just come out and start making all these shoes that are so different.
Drastically different,
philosophically different, etc.
Yeah, that's a great point. Philosophically different.
Yeah, we were different from our core from the start. This was almost 11 years ago when we decided to start Altra. Definitely 11 years ago when we were hacking up shoes and starting to promote that more zero drop and whatnot. And 10 years ago, we were we were in the middle of trying to get funding and getting the shoes finalized and designed. That was all 10 years ago.
I was just reflecting back on that, because a lot of the questions I ask a lot of my guests are what the next 10 years look like. And a lot of times, particularly when we just ended a decade, you reflect back on what those last 10 years look like. And for you guys, gosh, that's that perfect window, man, of that was a crazy, crazy 10 years.
It was wild.
With a lot of highs and a lot of lows.
A lot of lows, a lot of highs, more highs than lows. So that's good. And it was a lot of hard times, but at the same time, man, I learned. We learned business.
Yeah,
we learned manufacturing, and we learned all sorts of stuff. It's been awesome. It's been great experience, and obviously Altra's done incredibly well too. So that helps. That when you're successful, and lucky, and whatever else you want to call it, we made it, and it was awesome.
Yeah. So, oh boy, so much to dig into. So, right off of the bat, let's talk about the two main things that Altra was originally known for, and that really you guys use to differentiate yourself from the rest of the marketplace, are the zero drop and the wide toe box.
That's right.
Those are the two key, and there's something more that we're going to go into besides that, but that was the concept that got it all started.
Correct. Those were the two unique selling propositions that we said we are different, distinctly different than any other brand out there, and these are the flagship features that make us different.
And tell me about, I know the mechanics about you're going in there, you're going and doing the molding and everything, but where did the thoughts come from particularly for me, because the zero drop was never as big a deal for me personally as the wide toe box.
Yep.
But man, when that wide toe box hit, and it just completely changed everything for me personally. And there's nobody, even to this day, there's really only, now to most recently, there are some people that are finally starting to catch on. But even when the last decade with you guys, as you took over the ultra running industry and that market, quite frankly, nobody caught on. Nobody seemed to realize, all the usually when you've got something that's so revolutionary and such a game changer, you see the copycats coming out of the woodwork, everybody wanting to put out their version. But it seemed to take a long time for people to catch on to what you guys were doing. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is?
Well, when you've been doing it a certain way for 50 years, what are you going to do? Come out and say we did it wrong for the last 50 years?
Yeah.
Right?
Because because it's so contradictory to everything.
Exactly. And so, they had to slowly do it. And so now we're starting to see people come out and again, we don't like to say wide. Okay, we're foot shaped. We are shaped like a healthy foot. It's not wide; it's foot shaped.
was
Although it does
phrase
definitely fit a little bit more of someone that.
What was the
has a
phrase
fuller
we just said outside before we came in here? It was embrace the space.
Embrace the space.
Yes.
Free the toes.
Yes.
Yes.
Such a big deal.
Yeah, and it's not to downplay Altra and our ideas, but if you look at it, there was other shoe brands doing it, right? The comfort space, right? Crocs and Chacos and Birkenstocks.
New Balance technically had that.
Yeah, they had widths.
4D or whatever.
Yeah, but that was the whole shoe. That wasn't
Right.
Ours has a snugger heel. Ours is much more V-shaped.
Right, a
right?
natural-
And theirs
again,
was
foot-shaped.
square. Yeah, theirs was just wide across
Dad
the board.
shoes.
And ours are just foot-shaped and particularly roomier in the toes. And so when you look at a lot of comfort footwear brands, there's other brands out there that have done it, but nobody has touched it in a performance fashion. When you come to a technical shoe, no one's touched it, and we were like, why not? It
Right.
works. We know it works, and why aren't we doing it in running shoes specifically?
Well, and the biggest thing for me, what it seemed like what you guys figured out, and it may have been lucky because Golden kind of got injured when you guys were really going through a lot of your testing. So you ended up being the key tester. And we were talking about this a lot yesterday. And you were testing these in all these big-time endurance races, these 100-mile races.
50-mile, 100-mile, 100-kilometer mountain trail races, yep.
And so when you're testing these shoes, you're testing them in the manner in which 90% of the population is going to be using them.
Right.
Because like the Nikes and the Adidases of the world, they're out there testing on track stars. Mm-hmm. These hyper performance athletes that are running, a couple hundred yards,
and
all
they're
this
paid
arch
six-figure
technology.
salaries to run in their shoes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so they're not creating a product that fits the need of 90% of the runners who need a good running shoe. Whereas you guys, because you were testing in that endurance world, you're creating a shoe that's exactly what everybody, that 90, 95% of the world is looking for and could never find in a Nike or an Adidas or some of those other more traditional shoes.
Well, there's a couple things. I've got a couple quotes that help with that. One of my favorites is Steve Jobs, and he says, you got to start with the customer experience. You can't start with a product and figure out where you're going to sell it. You
can't
have
start
to
with the
start
technology.
Yeah, exactly. And then, where am I going to sell this? Let's figure out how. No, it's like we were runners. We wanted a specific shoe for us and for our customers that we were selling to. We felt like the industry was not adapting to science. It was not adapting at all. It was stale. Nothing had changed. In fact,
nothing.
You looked at in the 90s and the 2000s, there was not a single new shoe company that made it over that 20 to 30 years. Nobody since Brooks and Mizuno had been able to enter into the running space in over 25 years. Nobody. And it's fun. Now there's 3 brands that have broken into that space, right? Us, Altra, Hoka, and On. Mm-hmm. And it's fun to see that, hey, you don't have to do it the same old way, because everyone was arguing about, well, our wave is better than your gel, and my gel is better than your HydroFlow, and my HydroFlow is better than your shocks or air or whatever. It's like but the geometry was identical.
Yep.
There was no difference in geometry. Every single, and I mean absolutism here, every shoe on the market, the heel cushion was twice as high as the forefoot cushion across the board.
Standard.
Drop was not even a term, and that was kind of fun that we were able to bring in that term to the entire industry. And now the industry is, well, what's your drop? Is it a 4 mil? Is it an 8 mil? Is it 12? Is it 0?
Thing.
And drop was something that we're pretty proud of, that we brought to the industry. That concept that the heel doesn't have to be twice as high as the forefoot. Yeah, because it wasn't even questioned 10 years ago.
And I think that goes back to, again, it's the form, it's the function over the look. I think that a lot of the reason why they do that is the same reason why they put heels on women's shoes. It creates that look on a person that's attractive. But
tightens up that calf.
Yeah, but from a functionality standpoint, it's disastrous. It's counterintuitive.
If nature wanted you with a heel, why weren't we born that way?
Yeah,
why when you get out in the morning, get out of bed every morning, you are 0 drop, you're flat.
Yeah.
Why? And yet, why do we try to mechanically change what nature has developed?
Right. Well, and that brings up a great point, because I also want to dive into the only change that's happened since you guys have entered the marketplace that I've noticed is the minimal versus maximal thing, and you see that with the topos and that Vibram kind of minimalist movement, and then you see the opposite of that with the Hoka Onos, with the going with the Max cushion on that. But you guys have kind of stuck with your original plan. So let's talk about what your perception is on that minimalist versus maximalist running setup.
Yeah. So I think what's nice now is that way back in the day, the heel cushion there was 24 millimeters of heel cushion and 12 millimeters of forefoot, and that's virtually every brand. Then you add the insole and you add the outsole, and it's 20 millimeter forefoot and like a 34 millimeter heel, right? And that's just the cushioning level was maybe a little bit less cushion in some performance product, but almost every shoe, whether it was neutral, pronation, or motion control, it was all the same. And so the nice thing I think that minimalism and maximalism brought is that people have choice. Altra, we're alternative. We provided a healthy alternative to the industry. And other brands, whether it's Vibram, Five Fingers, or Hoka, there's options now that there just wasn't 10 or 15 years ago. Yeah. And one thing I've always said is people say, oh, my knees hurt. I need more cushion. And I laugh. I think it's totally wrong. And the way to do that is jump, okay? If you stand up and you jump, don't bend your knees and land flat, okay? Yeah. Then jump as high as you can and land under a bent knee. And if you think that an extra 5 or 10 millimeters of cushion is going to stop that straight up jump and landing impact, straight, and right. It doesn't work. It's laughable. Yeah. Right. Cushioning works for feet. Right. If you have foot problems, if you have sensitive feet and arches and neuromas and a bunch of foot issues, cushioning works at feet. The biomechanics, the bending of your knee, the knot to landing underneath a bent knee, the biomechanics is actually what works for joints. So if people say, "Oh, I have knee problems," I usually recommend less cushion. And if people say, "Oh, my feet are always hurting," I say, "Oh, well, you probably should get more cushion." Right. That's our perspective, and Altra has shoes in both categories. Not quite as minimal, but we have shoes that are 14 millimeters in terms of our Vanish series, and we have shoes in the 30 millimeters of cushion like the Paradigm and the Olympus. And so for us, you can choose your level of cushion based off of terrain and personal preference and so forth, but everything we make, and we've kind of moved away from zero drop a little bit just because it is so associated with the barefoot stuff. Yeah, we've been calling it balanced cushioning. Right. You haven't moved away from the concept. You've moved away from the terminology. Yeah, strictly the terminology. Yep. So our shoes are balanced and they're cushioned, whether they're 14 millimeters of stack height or 35 millimeters of stack height. So, what was so cool to me is when you guys first hit the market. But you and I have a lot of things in common. But when you guys first hit the market, my parents, who have been longtime marathon runners and everything, they were the first ones in my family, in my immediate circle, to get your shoes. Mm-hmm. And I remember the first time I saw them, and I remember I'm looking at them like, what are these shoes that you guys are wearing? Because you're just so ingrained with the look of the Nikes and the Adidas, and then when Altras come out, they just look so much different. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, like one of the things that I grew to love about them is that they weren't so slick and stylish. They were kind of dorky looking a little bit. They were kind of... Especially those early days. Very mechanical, very basic, just like... But I remember when I first saw them, and I'm like, dude, there's no way I'm wearing those shoes. I can't do it, man. Well, and to y'all's detriment, my father, who's wrecked many, many times over the year, now runs like he looks like he's half crippled anyway. So you add the shoes and you add his gait and his limp, and you've got people on the side of the road pulling over, asking him if he needs a ride home when he's going out for a jog. But anyway, I digress. But so I was looking at these shoes thinking, man, I don't know, man. I just don't know if I can do it. And so I resisted for like that first year, and they're telling me, and my brother's running them, and everybody's just telling me, dude, you've got to run these shoes. You're just not going to believe the difference. And so finally, when I went and broke down and bought a pair and did that first run, literally like my first run, I mean, I'm used to running in like an ASIC or something where there's a certain amount of, you're just breaking them in. That's just part of the process. You've got to break these shoes in. And I put that first pair of shoes on, and I had a race the next weekend, and they fit like a glove. There was it blew me away that there was no breaking in period. Like they were literally like I had been wearing them for months in advance, and then
like, okay, it's race day. You've got the right shoe. Now go hit it. and so at that point, that was what sold me. I said, I don't care what they look like. I'm getting them. I'm sticking with them, and I'm going to ride these things until the wheels fall off because they just because again, I come in from I'm a flat-footed guy. I've got these duck feet that are just very hard to deal with. I've never been able to work with a high-performance shoe at all, and to discover these, man, it was just like this revelatory experience. And then what I realized is, getting into the endurance world and to the ultras, I wasn't the only one having that epiphany. And you saw this, I don't want to say tidal wave, because there still are some other brands in the marketplace and there's all people wearing other shoes. But you just saw these ultra runners, just this complete shift.
Yep.
And now it's the mainstay.
Yeah.
That's all you see. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have to look for another shoe if you're going to a 100-mile race.
Yeah, they just work. Well, and the thing is what people, that's still even a minority. The problem is with ultra marathons, they're just that much more effective because your biomechanics become so much better. And,
it's like the more you wear, the further you got to do, the more they work.
You want the best, most efficient shoe. You want that one that's going to be the most comfortable, the one that lets your toes splay and stabilize, absorb shock and comfort and level. So the ultra marathoners have been fun because they were such early adopters of ultra. And yes, I'm an ultra runner. I'm an avid ultra runner as well. But ultimately, we created ultra more for people like your dad, because we built it for people that were injured, people that had tried arch supports, people that had tried pronation shoes and motion control shoes, and had always had problems with injuries. And they tried everything. So as much as they're great for elite runners and efficient runners and ultra marathoners, we ultimately started it for your 10-mile a week. I struggle with injuries and I just want to get out and explore and run. And so I love the fact that ultramarathoners adopted us so fast and so just like you said, passionately.
Yeah.
It was awesome. They're so vocal. But ultimately, our first shoe we created with the Instinct was a road shoe. We sell more road shoes than trail shoes.
No kidding.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
How about that?
And,
well, I guess you also that's also a much bigger marketplace.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously.
In the running community, it's 90+% are road.
I got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, but so ultimately, we started it for people that were injured, that had problems with knees and backs and arches and neuromas and bunions, and it's been fun. Essentially, we have a road line and we have a trail line. We do a little bit of hiking products, and we also do some gym and fitness. But ultimately, all of our shoes are performance based. But what we have done is we've made certain colors and certain marketing efforts to really reach out and go after some of the walkers and targeting the podiatrists. For example, we are one of the only athletic footwear brands that is approved by the American Podiatric Medical Association.
How about that?
We're one of the only performance brands that is approved through them. And so it's been fun to see. Initially, 10 years ago, the doctors were not as... It took us a while to break down some of those barriers.
No kidding, even with the doctors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Because again, a lot of these doctors had been doing they'd been putting in the same arch supports and same fill in the blank brand for 20, 30 years. And all of a sudden you have this new alternative, very different brand coming out. And it took us a while. But that's one of the things that Golden's really done a great job and focused on, is doing a lot of that medical stuff and going to these conferences. And I've done a little bit, but that's been more of Golden's expertise there. And it's been great. It's been really fun to see. I mean, my mom's 80 years old, and it has helped her feet a ton. And she
she's not some
run.
endurance runner.
She doesn't run at all.
Right.
And another category that we got into just totally accidentally was thru hikers. We're the number one shoe used on the Appalachian Trail and number one shoe on the Pacific Coast Trail. And yet these people are hiking with backpacks 2,000, 3,000 miles, and yet we are like hands down number one. So it's kind of fun and interesting, the different people and groups that have adopted us and
well, and you're one of the
only
performance shoes that's even doing focused on a hiking boot. I mean, your hiking boots are more like a shoe than they are a boot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's been fun. Yeah, it's been interesting to see who's adopted us. But ultimately, Ultras are best for beginner runners and injured runners. Try us.
Yes, for sure.
You've already tried other stuff. Try Ultras now.
We've talked about the shoes some, but I want to talk about the business side. Mm-hmm. And this was it was really fascinating to get to spend some time talking with you yesterday and understanding all the different hoops and hurdles that you guys have got to go through and all the different learning experiences over the last 10 years. I mean, you think about the knowledge you've gained over the last 10 years, and it's got to be pretty amazing. What a ride, right? You get your early investing going and things are rock and rolling and you realize you've figured something out and you put it all on the line essentially to go for it. And it's working and you start getting good feedback. What was that aha moment for you where you were like, okay, this is going to work?
Well, I don't know how much we talked about this, but my aha moment came after I used up my inheritance, like I said earlier. After 6 months after I hadn't had a paycheck in 6 months. I had a 1-year-old child, and my aha moment came at mile 97 of Wasatch 100, where I had this pair of shoes that I literally mortgaged my dad's house for. The only pair of Lone Peaks, the first runnable pair of Lone Peaks ever. And I laced them up, and a couple weeks later ran Wasatch 100. And I broke down in tears at mile 97, and I had this poignant moment in which I knew. And again, I'd already quit my job.
It wasn't tears of pain.
No. It was like, oh my God, Altra's gonna make it. And again, I already knew it, right? Like I knew it. I'd already sacrificed so much, but that like pure knowledge. I've never had a more powerful moment where it was like, boom. I know it's gonna work. Like it was like after that moment, I wasn't even nervous. I wasn't even nervous because I was like, we're gonna make it.
It completely changed the perspective.
And I thought we were gonna make it. I believed we were gonna make it, but I didn't know we were gonna make it.
You really wanted to make it?
Oh yeah, I wanted to, but now it was like knowledge. It wasn't even like there was not even like an ounce of, oh boy, I don't know if we're gonna make it. It was like, no, we're gonna make it.
Yeah.
Like there's no if, ands, or buts. It will happen. I knew it at that moment.
One of the things that I'm very curious about, and I don't want to go off into a rabbit hole here, but there's a process of creating a prototype of what you like, of the shoe that you create the vision, if you will. Now you've got this product or this prototype, and getting that prototype to where there's 10,000 of them pairs ready to sell is this huge process. And the process of going to manufacturing, and everybody has to do that in China, and you have to go through all these different, I mean, you've got these communication barriers, and you've got these technological barriers as far as like them even because with a lot of these manufacturers, they're manufacturing multiple products for multiple companies, and they're all kind of, like you said with the shoes, they're all kind of in that same vein. They're all within that. All the manufacturers are all making them the same way. So when you go to the manufacturing process, what was that like trying to get them to understand your vision and get them to then make it the way that you want it versus make it the way that everybody else is making it? Because just because you tell them this is how it's supposed to be, this is because you give them the schematics and go through all that process, they still a lot of times don't make it the right way.
Oh, it was hard because these factories had never built a shoe like this.
Yeah, because you're completely changing the concept.
Yeah.
So imagine, and the reason why I ask is because I have some other friends that are in other industries, and they're not really revolutionizing their product line. They're doing some changes and modifications, but they're not completely changing the concept. And yet they still struggle with those manufacturing issues, particularly at first when you're getting those first runs done.
Yep. So
when you're going through a complete change in the whole setup, how do you deal with that? What was that like?
It was a battle. We were really lucky where we found a small little independent group up in Portland that was an advanced prototype company.
How did you find them, if you don't mind me asking?
I think Jeremy found them on LinkedIn or something like that.
Okay, so just a random...
Yeah, it was just research and just finding this contact and reaching out to that contact, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, hey, I actually know these people, and kind of just connecting that way. And I think Jeremy really added that early on.
And tell me what the name of that company was again?
Proof of Concept.
Proof of Concept.
Yep. And so they were an ex Adidas guy and an ex Nike guy that had basically said we want to like kind of do our own thing and do some fun projects. So other brands, some of them hiking, some of them outdoor, some of them running, would basically say, look, we don't have any engineers, or we don't want to put any resources on this yet. We need you to to help us build
Basically
a shoe.
make it for you, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely. And so we found them and we said, okay, what would it cost to do a couple shoes? And they were super cool. They were like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. This is why we started this company. This is why we left those corporate environments. Wow, they were dying. And obviously
So they were ready to almost be like a partner.
They almost did actually. They were they were thinking about it, but we were able to get other funding elsewhere. But it was cool, and that was a gem. Finding them and building that relationship was. I don't know if it was just lucky or if it was
fortuitous.
Just like it was just meant to be.
Yeah.
And so they really helped us, and we found a really cool factory that was able to work with us well. But it was very hard because they were resistant to our last. The last is the form. That's almost the secret sauce to Altra, frankly, is the last. And that's where I can show you one. I have one here at the office where they stick this molding, this foot essentially into and then they build the shoe around it, and it's the fit. It's called the last, and it's all the geometry. And they were
all
like
those little calculations,
all the micro calculations on. Yeah, absolutely. And it was a struggle trying to get the factory to and the last makers as well, just the people that do the molds for these lasts to do it the way we wanted to. And they're like, so it was interesting. It was fun.
Have you feel like you've overcome a lot of that now, or do you feel like you still struggle with some of that when you want to change the technology aspect?
There's always manufacturing things. It's just when you're
part of the process.
It's just part of the process.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never spoken to a single brand that doesn't have a headache.
Well,
occasionally, whether it's that material didn't weld quite like we thought it would, or that midsole foam didn't tout up to where it was supposed to be, or
you think you've got it all right. You've dotted all your I's, you crossed all your T's, and then yet still, once it goes through the actual process, for some reason,
the thing is trying. When you, for example, let's talk about midsole foams real fast. We have a bunch of different midsole foams that we use, and the process by which it's baked, quite literally, right, is it has to be consistent. And so there's issues where if you don't get the process at the right temperature, so if you build a shoe when it's first heating up versus when it's the hottest, that midsole is going to come out really firm or very soft.
So it's all about timing.
It's about timing and temperatures. And that's kind of the complexities that people struggle with. And so that's where it's like, I tried that one Altra and that midsole was terrible. It's like, sometimes it's just you got the early batch or a late batch, and we try to be consistent. We have an entire QC team and program, both in Asia and here in the United States, to try to make sure that our quality control is at the top of its game. And we still run into hurdles.
Yeah, it's a never-ending struggle. You're always going to have to battle.
And considering that we were three guys in our 20s,
that's what's so fascinating for me.
I think our QC rocks. I really do. There's obviously a few issues here and there where that mesh tends to blow out a little bit faster than we'd want or something like that. But I think right off the gates we did really well. And to this day, I think I'm really proud of our QC. And even that,
you're talking cosmetical. That's more
a lot of
a
it's
cosmetic thing.
And durability sometimes. There'll be a durability issue here or there. But functionally, I think our shoes are the best on the market.
For sure, without question. So once you get through that process and you've seen some success, now you get this first opportunity to get, I guess, purchased would be the right word for it.
Yep.
You got
our first acquisition.
Icon Health and Fitness.
Yep. So they came in really early. We scrapped together enough money to get a first run of shoes, and it sold out in a matter of weeks. And I started out mostly, I helped Golden out with some development early in the process, but my main role early on was sales. And so I actually...
Talk about what that looked like.
Yeah. Oh, boy. It was just me.
Yeah.
But I packed up my Subaru. The shoes landed April 1st, and I got a shipment. I put everything I could. I had a couple pull-up banners, and I filled up my car with as many shoes as I possibly could. My Subaru Outback with a Thule box on top, and I started driving across the entire country, knocking on doors, and just anybody who would listen.
Doing the work, man.
Yeah, it was pretty old school, selling out of a trunk style, and we were pretty lucky. We launched with just over, I think, 33 doors launched right out of the gates with us, which is really cool. And then that road trip, I doubled it on that road trip. I drove to Boston, and so the public launch is at Boston Marathon in 2011.
Nice.
Was when that was the first time we'd showcased the products out to the world, and we were selling the shoes at Boston Marathon that I had taken across in my Subaru across the country, and then I went down the East Coast, and then so I did this huge loop. It was about 35-day loop, and that was kind of the initial Cells kickoff public launch. We then got acquired by Icon Health and Fitness, and they were able to give us a bit more infrastructure.
Yeah, like give you some just structure, period.
Yeah, I mean,
you guys,
just simple things. Yeah, simple things like billing and invoicing.
Yeah,
it's like
all those back end stuff.
A lot
you
of that
don't think about necessarily. There's
absolutely.
So much of that.
Yeah, and so that was cool process getting acquired on a first acquisition,
and that's what ended up getting you guys up to Ogden, correct?
Logan,
yeah.
Yeah. So they left us down here in Orem in the same offices that we're in right now. We started it in the basements, and then from there we got a little office here in Orem, right at the base of Mount Timpanogas, and they left us down here for a couple years. Yeah, so several years actually. It was about 3-4 years, and then as we built out, we found out that the customer service and the warehousing and the operations and so forth were different for treadmills than they were for shoes. And so
just a little bit.
I worked with Icon. It was a process.
Yeah.
And I ended up building out a whole customer service team. I built out an entire warehouse team, an operations team.
Yeah.
And I had half of my team.
Create the organization, essentially.
Yeah. And I kind of moved on from sales into a bit more of a presidential role. And started managing the income statement and the budgets and things like that. And so I had a team in Logan and a team down here in Orem, and it just got a bit much. And as we were starting to really grow in that third and fourth year, Icon's consolidate. We need you in. And
that's when y'all got everything.
So we left this office open just for a couple staff. Golden was working out of the Orem office. He did not move to Logan, and a couple other staff, and then we had built up a returns center here in Orem where we repurpose our shoes. People, rather than if it's a used shoe, so maybe it's scuffed up, maybe someone did 7 miles in it. You don't throw those away. We have an outlet here.
I was hoping that would come up
in a basement office complex, and
cool.
And it's grown. And so we took over a lot of our old offices. We just turned it into a larger outlet. So we still to this day have an outlet here in a basement office complex in Orem, Utah, where I sell thousands and thousands of used shoes.
It's kind of almost coming full circle back to that retail.
Yeah, and and now I moved back south down here, so it's kind of funny to be working back in this office for the first time in 6 years. But that took us up to Logan and built out the team there, and then that was almost, I think, probably our best years. Was about a year after being in Logan, we had things clicking, and we had a couple of just unbelievable years that then set us up for the next acquisition.
And I want to talk about that next acquisition too. But there's also some stuff I want to talk about that kind of relates to the show that happened with you through the course of that first purchase, and then what led up to the second purchase later on. You basically had to take on. I mean, you were the president.
I was the president. Once I moved to Logan, I officially became the president.
So you were in charge. I mean, and you go from being a retail dude that likes to go run, just having a good time playing with some shoes, to now all of a sudden you've got all these people and organization that you're responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
That was a very stressful situation to be in.
Yeah.
And you're learning a lot. As that as all coming to a head, you realized that maybe that wasn't the right role for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I thought it was great. Being the president, I loved it, and we were clicking.
It's a nice boost to the ego, man.
Yeah, ego. It feels great on the ego.
Yeah.
But, ultimately it was, I believed in what I was doing. I had an amazing team of people that around me. And as much as I get to take some of the credit, but we had an amazing sales organization. We had...
You're living the dream.
We were clicking. The whole team, customer service and order entry, the product team and the marketing team, we were just clicking. We had a great few years, and it was stressful, but it was very manageable, and it was great. I had a young family, and finding a pretty good balance. And as we got bigger and bigger, it definitely started taking its toll. But ultimately, it was good. I thought I had a pretty good balance. But then the second acquisition happened, and anybody knows when you start talking, Altra had gotten, huge. And so when you start talking about acquisitions at that amount of money, which I can't talk about, but it's out there, it's massive amounts of money.
That was a major financial transaction. And quite frankly, really between Icon Health and VF Corp. I mean, really, those were the two that were battling in between those negotiations, and you're kind of this guy in the middle.
Yeah.
This kid in the middle, and they're playing with your ball. They're playing with your child, your baby.
They're arguing over my child.
Yeah, and what to do with it and how to deal with all that, and you're kind of stuck in the middle. And through all that, there's decisions being made that you don't necessarily get to be in control of, but yet you're still looked at as that decision maker. So people are still looking at you as like you're the reason why that decision was made. So that kind of affects some of your relationships that you can't even necessarily do anything about. But through all that, financially, you were not compensated the way that you should have been.
No.
But the contract,
I didn't start Altra for the big buyout, so it's not.
No, but at the same time, I mean, like when you've built this thing when you've created this child, if again, like using that metaphor, to have it kind of taken from you and not be compensated at least in a fair way, I mean, that's tough. That's a tough pill to swallow at least for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, it was hard for me, and it was taking a personal toll. Definitely, I had over 300 people, whether employees or independent sales reps or international distributors or warehouse staff, etc., that were relying on me and Altra for their paychecks.
Yeah.
And so, having to lay off those people and it was hard. Big acquisitions are tough. Luckily, I was really open and honest, and VF was really cool. Icon, there was some things in the contract, and it is what it is. They got us to where we were, but ultimately, I came out where I wanted to. I worked with VF and said, I don't know if this corporate, being a senior corporate is really what I want in life. It's not why I started Altra. It's not.
Right.
I got put there, but I was good at it. I feel I'm really proud of how well I did, and considering that I don't have that background or experience, I do think I nailed it. I'm really proud of my efforts.
Yeah,
and frankly, the results speak for themselves.
I was going to say, I mean, the company that you built as a result, I mean,
yes.
that's clearly, it speaks for itself.
Yeah, and so when they did move everyone to Denver, I came to them and said, I don't know if that's for me, right? Especially after all the stress and the personal issues I'd been dealing with, and family life and so forth, I just said, I don't know if that's for me. And the new company, VF, they've been totally supportive, and I'm so confident and happy in their ownership. They didn't treat me unfair at all, and they did me it's been great. And I basically said, look, I need to I want to work from home in a little bit more of a flexible schedule. I need that, frankly. I want to, since I started Altra, I've had 3 young kids, and I haven't really given them the attention that they deserve, and that I want.
Fourth kid was taking over.
Fourth kid was,
fourth
kid got a little bit more attention, and same thing with my wife and our relationship. VF was super cool about it, and so I said I don't want to move to Denver, and I'd like a little bit more of a flexible role, and they said great. And it's been interesting because I've been behind the desk dealing with revenue projections and budget forecasts and, human resource issues and, all this stuff. And so now they say, look, they were really cool about it. They said, Brian, we can hire people to do that.
Exactly.
What we can't hire is someone to go out and tell your story. And so it's been great. So I do travel now. My life's totally changed in the last 12 to 15 months. And not that 2018 was the worst year of my life. It was the hardest from a corporate, definitely personal. Like I mentioned earlier, I was self-medicating too much, and I recognized that.
And that was with alcohol?
Alcohol, yeah. Just way too much.
And
dealing with it was, exactly. It was a very humbling experience because the previous, 2015, 2016, 2017, I was at the top of my game. And I was doing great, and
the business was still clicking in 2018 as well. The business was rolling.
2015, 16, 17, Altra was just making massive leaps, and I was good, And all of a sudden, end of 2017, the announcement came that we were up for sale, and all of a sudden that process started, and by spring of 2018, I'm struggling. And by the fall of 2018,
wheels about to fall off.
Wheels are half off, and I'm holding on by a thread.
Right.
And 2019 was a really good year for me to put life back in perspective, to rekindle my relationships with my family, and to take a little time to think for myself. Because ultimately, there was even in 2016, 2017, we were getting so big that business was good. I was good. Like I wasn't having problems necessarily, but I didn't have that time to think about more about myself and longer term goals. It was so reactionary and go. And it was great. But 2019 has been great for me to rethink that. I moved out of Logan because there's nothing keeping me in Logan. Once
they moved the headquarters out.
Yeah, it's like I'm not from there. I have no family.
Right.
The remaining staff moved to Denver, and so we decided. It's like my wife and I said, if we could live anywhere we want, where do we want to live? And
beautiful.
And we settled in Heber, Utah, which is just outside of Park City.
Yeah.
It's 30 minutes from my Orem office here, and so now I do have a little office space. I come down most Mondays, where we're all right now.
Yeah.
I come down most Mondays when I'm not traveling on the road. I travel about 7 to 8 days a month on the road, and most of that is speaking like this. I do presentations. I'm also do all PR. We have a wonderful PR manager named Shanna in Denver, but I do a lot of interviews, a lot of speaking engagements.
That's more of your role within the company now.
Yeah. And I work from home, 2 weeks of the month, and the other 2 weeks I'm either in Orem or traveling, which is a great balance. I take my kids to school every morning at 8:30, drop them off. My wife and I kind of split picking them up at 3:30, and I've got a home office that is awesome. It's been
all of that
good
so
for me.
much better than a stupid check.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the point I was trying to get to is like you maybe didn't get that financial compensation that you were justly deserved, but you got something better. Like in hindsight, able to go to those guys and be able to articulate what your vision is and what you needed, quite frankly,
I needed it,
professionally
absolutely.
and personally.
Yep.
And then knowing that you just partnered with the right company because they supported you in that and allowed you that. I mean, because quite frankly, they could have given you the severance package if they wanted
absolutely.
to. They could have sent you on down the road. I mean,
yeah.
But how dumb would that have been to them to take the face of the company, somebody who not only has blood, sweat, and tears in it, but literally is like, you and Golden, you are Ultra. VF Corp, they're not Ultra.
Yeah.
It's Brian, it's Golden, it's, y'all are the face, the three of you. But to stick your neck out there and say, look, X, Y, Z, man, this is what I need. And to take the time to figure out what that is. Because quite frankly, a lot of us, that's the point of this podcast, a lot of us don't take the time to figure out what it is we even want.
Yeah.
What do we want that lifestyle to look like? And to take 2019 to figure that out, to articulate it, write it down, and then to present it and say, look, this is what I've got to have. Man, that's the payoff.
Yeah. And that was exactly a year ago. That was February, March of 2019 where I went to them and just said, hey, I'm not moving. Not moving. And, I put in a lot of work. I put in 10 great years of work and sacrifice and creativity and learning. I mean, I didn't know what EBITDA was 10 years ago. And now, of course, I know exactly what EBITDA is. I reported on it, monthly and quarterly and annually.
But do you want to know what EBITDA is?
Yeah, I do. I'm really glad I know. But
right.
it's my new role is definitely a lot more fun. And I think I'm in a very, very unique position to do it.
Yes,
and
exactly.
And so
no one
I don't
else
even
could do what you're doing.
Yeah, and so it's changed my life. I'm the happiest I've been in years. I mean, I wasn't unhappy or having personal issues in 2015 and 2016, but I'm happier now than I was then, and my relationships are better. I'm mentally and physically healthier. And my outlook for the future is great. And 2020 is 2019 was a great year, kind of rediscovering some of that and having a little more time to read some books. And
we both had that year of rediscovery kind of thing.
Yeah, and my salary, my job responsibilities, it's a really, really good balance.
It's right fit.
It's wonderful, and I don't feel as guilty now when I go fishing on a Sunday afternoon, right?
Like we did yesterday.
Yeah, like we did yesterday, because before I would go and do that because I need it. I'm a mountain guy. I spend a lot of times in the mountains, and it's my peace. I love it. It's my therapy. It's the mountains and just being
outside. That's what drew us together originally. Is like that. Yeah, the outdoorsmanship.
I just love. I ski. I trail run. I fly fish.
That's where you recharge.
That's how I do it. And so before I would have to do that, but then it's like I'm gone. I'm traveling on the road all the time in hotels. And then when I am home, I'm at the office and stressed. And so I'd go away on the weekends and I'd actually feel guilty about going away fishing.
Yeah, then it becomes like it's not doing what it's there to do.
And now it's like I can go fishing on a Sunday, and it's because I'm home with my kids, every morning and in the afternoon when they get home from school. And my balance now is awesome. It's a really good place to be.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, and it's cool to, like, you figured out a lot of things in business through the course of Altra becoming what it is, but now you figured out some things in life.
Yep.
Like now you've kind of had that full circle. Like, and it's always good. We always want to know that business stuff. We always want to have that level of intelligence, that level of understanding about what's going on. But when you can understand that from a lifestyle perspective, that's when it really means something. That's when you have that another aha moment. That's a real aha moment.
Yeah. And maybe I love the entrepreneurial side of that, especially early on when it was a lot more flexible. And we would, as a team, we would literally go on lunch runs a couple times a week, just as a team in those early days because we could.
Because you can,
yeah. But then and I do miss some of that entrepreneurial stuff. And right now I'm with Altra for a while and VF, and I just turned 38. So in 10 years, I could easily jump. I could easily say, you know what? I kind of want to go back and either start my own company or find a young company and say, hey, look, I know exactly how to scale.
Well, now you've got that experience. Yeah.
Right now, I'm so happy. I don't
stick with what you got.
I'm sticking with what I've got. But I get people asking me that all the time. Like, what's next? And I said, right now,
that's the problem.
I'm doing great work. But you know what? In 6, 7, 10 years, I might have an itch, or I might find a great idea, or want something like that. But we'll see. I feel like the last 10 years have opened up a lot of avenues in my life. And right now I am enjoying these types of conversations and being able to go out and tell the Altra story more and more. And
that's what the next 10 years looks like.
Just telling the story, man. Yeah. And it's fun. I go out to Denver once a month. I meet with the R&D team. Right now, I am wearing the Lone Peak 5, which
the hottest shoe I've ever seen.
Well, no one's ever seen this. Literally, no one's seen this. This is one of the first really almost polished runnable samples that's going to come out here in 10 months. So we're 10 months ahead already testing. Wow. So I'm still very involved. In that, I just don't have all as much of that day-to-day responsibility.
None of the stressful
and I'm able
parts.
To, when I am out speaking at speaking engagements, I don't have all that baggage and stress like I used to have, because I'd still go out and do some of the speaking engagements. I do a lot more now, but I wasn't able to be as present.
Aspect.
And now I can be present. Yes. I can be focused. I can think a little bit clearer, and I love telling the story. I mean, Altra is my child. It's my 4th child. And I'm really proud of what we created. And what's been really humbling about it is it has resonated with people.
Yes.
Like, wow, like this is so cool.
It's making a difference.
It's made a difference. And ultimately, that's why we started Altra.
And I think that's one of those things that would cause you to get back into some of those other realms, is when you find an opportunity where you can make a real difference with the product. And that's why what you're doing with Altra right now is such a important. I feel like that's why VF set you up the way that they did, because that's so important. Your story is so important to the movement, quite frankly. I mean, to what we're doing. I mean, people need to hear that. It's pretty awesome. I do want to circle back around real quick to again, a part of the lifestyle that you were able to implement very early on was these outdoors trips. You're avid fisherman, avid hiker, camper, obviously trail runner, endurance runner, all that. But you early on, pretty much out of school, started taking these trips to Alaska.
Okay, yeah.
Tell me, we could spend another 30 minutes on just that one thing, but maybe tell me one of your favorite experiences from those trips. And, well, tell me what those trips look like, and then one of your favorite experiences from those trips.
Yeah, okay. So in college, I had a friend who was like, hey, we're going up to Alaska. If you want, you can come up and work with us this summer. The money's awesome. And I've always wanted to go to Alaska. And so when I was 21, I packed up my car on May 1st and drove to Alaska.
You drove to
Alaska. Yeah. So from Utah, I'm trying to remember exactly. I think it's like 60 some odd hours of driving.
So a couple days.
And so, yeah, if you drive 3 straight days with
Without-
never stopping
not
outside of
sleeping.
gas, you can get there in 3 days, just under 3 days. But we would usually take about 4.
I was gonna say, make it humanly possible.
And it's cool, man. Like there is nothing up there, like the Yukon Territory and all that. There is nothing up there. So. That was really cool. And so I did that for a couple summers in college. I would just go up and find various jobs, and most of it was, shuttle driver, hotel concierge, waiting tables was probably where I settled on.
But it was so you could just go fish and stuff.
Yeah,
so you could go
So
play,
you work.
right?
Yeah, you work from 5 o'clock till 11 o'clock at night waiting tables, and it doesn't get dark at all. Like I didn't see a star the whole summer.
Wow.
Any of those summers, I didn't see any stars. And so you wake up at go to bed at midnight or whatever, or 1 a.m, wake up at 7 or 8 or 9, and you got all day to go and do.
whatever
So
you want,
I was fishing every day and kayaking, and just fell in love with Alaska in general. My wife and I ended up going on a honeymoon there, and
yeah, that was interesting. You said you gave her the choice of where she wanted to go because you were doing those Alaska trips on your own. She wasn't necessarily.
Yeah, I met her between the two of the
Between
summers.
two of those trips.
Yeah, and so we started dating, and then it was like,
Hey,
hey,
I'm
I'm going to
taking
Alaska
off.
this summer. So we dated for 5-6 months, and it was great. And then I left and said, hey, see ya. And
But
she
came
knew,
back and she stuck
and
around.
came back, and we kept dating. Got married the following summer. And I said, hey, where do you want to go? I said, we can go to Hawaii, we can go to Alaska. And she was like, I want to go to Alaska.
That's
and
cool.
So that was
That's how you knew you found the right one.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, boom,
right in
yes,
your
boom.
wheelhouse.
And so I try to go back almost every summer now. I think I've gone back, I want to say 6 times in the last 6 years. I missed 1 year, but then I also went twice 1 year too.
Oh, nice. So made up for it.
Yeah, made up for it. So I love Alaska, and this summer, we're taking my oldest boy. He's 10,
Nice.
and so we're really excited. And my sister and her husband and her son are coming up too. So,
see, I would make a whole little crew
so
out
it's
of
going to
it.
be fun. It's going to be really fun this summer. But one of my favorite, probably the hairiest adventure I had was we went up in the Arctic in late September.
Above the Arctic Circle?
Well above the Arctic Circle,
Wow.
yeah. The base city was in Kotzebue,
Man,
which
that's
is,
really
I think,
nothing.
one of the oldest permanently resided place in North America. Called Kotzebue. It's a little city over on like way, way, way north west, way up on the kind of by the
On that northern slope or
way,
whatever.
way, way up there. I mean,
Wow,
you can
yeah.
almost see Russia, right? And we took a little plane way up. These planes are think of like a fat tire mountain bike, but they put them on a plane. They land on these gravel bars. It's ridiculous. And we got dropped. Yeah, it was awesome. We got dropped off, and it was cold, but it was beautiful, the colors and whatnot. And then we rafted for 7 days down basically an unknown river, looking for. Very few people have gone down this river ever. Wow. And we saw caribou, lots of grizzly bears, but ultimately we were targeting these world-class Dolly Varden, which are these char that come out of the ocean, and they're, literally they are 3 feet long, and they're bright red colors. They're like, think about brook trout that get up to be, 35 inches.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
35-inch brook trout.
I have no idea
so,
what that looks like.
So that was pretty cool. That was pretty hairy, and lots of rain and cold and bears. One day we had 21 grizzly bears that we saw in one day. Just every corner, and dead salmon on the river, and
feasting.
They're feasting, and we were trying to catch fresh salmon and fresh dollies, and we had Arctic grayling. I don't know if all the diehard fishermen are going to know what Arctic grayling are, but we filleted one of those. It's like an Arctic bass almost.
Nice,
beautiful coloration, and we filleted those and put them in lime juice, and had like ceviche up there,
nice.
like really fun,
Yeah.
cool stuff, and. Just love being in the wilderness and love adventures. I have exercise science and outdoor recreation management is my degree, and so I've taught backpacking adjunct at university level.
Nice.
I'm a Knowles grad, National Outdoor Leadership School. I've worked as a backpacking guide, a kayaking guide.
You did that out in Alaska as well, or?
Yeah, a little bit in Alaska.
Little bit
Just kind of, I was just kind of an assistant for a couple friends on that. So
extra set of hands.
Yeah, extra set of hands.
Just to go ahead and enjoy the
kayaking
experience.
and fishing. And so I would do a little bit of that. I worked for the outdoor rec program at
you have
UVU,
a lot of
and was on scholarship for all that from college. And so I'm an avid outdoorsman, and I somehow became a businessman. And now I'm a speaker. I go out and I speak and I do PR, and the outlet does report to me now. So because I've got that business experience,
so you do have
I do have that financial, reporting and all that, but just in terms of this outlet here. So that's kind of fun to keep my finger on the pulse.
Yeah,
but,
it kind of does that little full circle thing of getting to be in the little retail space.
That's right. Well, we're actually moving this to a fancy
location. We should talk about that.
Yeah, so we're moving it. Yeah, we're moving it in June here. So we are going to be taking over the keys to the new place here in a few weeks. And
y'all have completely run out. I mean,
we're out of space.
We are
out of space. So that's kind of a fun project for me. And so so it's fun.
So you got all the joy out of it without having to deal with all the stressful parts of it. That makes it so much fun.
Absolutely.
Well, and one of the cool things I thought about with your trips to Alaska, and I thought about this coming out here because for me, it was always such a treat coming from the South to come up here and do the skiing and everything, and I always loved it so much. And it's a really cool experience. But what's even cooler than get to have that experience is when you get to have that experience with your kids.
Yeah.
When you get to introduce them into that and let them see what you got to see that first time. And to me, that makes it even more fulfilling than getting to do it on your own.
Yeah.
As a dad, anyway.
Yeah, I take my kids every summer. We go camping about once a month in the summer.
Well, getting to do that Alaska trip with Ari this time around, that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, but all my kids love to fish, and we go camping and hiking, and we catch salamanders with our hands, and it's been fun that all of them unanimously love the outdoors. And I think my wife and I have done a good job of not like shoving it down their throat, but making it fun for them.
That's important, right?
Yeah, and find, so and it's like when we go fishing with my kids, as the second they get bored and want to start chucking rocks in the lake,
we're done.
Yeah. Put the pole away. Don't fight it. Yeah. Start chucking rocks in the river, the lake.
With it.
Have fun, and so it's my family means the world to me, and
you got some amazing kids.
Yeah,
sure.
my kids, and my wife. We love being outdoors and having those adventures. I've kind of got that adventurous spirit myself, and to share that and to build it with my kids brought me a lot of joy.
Well, and that brings up a great point because we have. That's the similar thing for both of us. And I did want to talk about all the different ways that our paths kind of have aligned. We talked about kind of having that 2018 and 2019 experience. But when we got together yesterday, we realized we were reading the same book, Sapiens, by whatever. I can't even pronounce his last name, but a brilliant book. Yep. We both have spent some time at UVU. You actually graduated from there, but that's my year out in Utah was at UVU, and I have so many fond, wonderful memories of that place. Both of us did our first marathon at St. George.
St. George Marathon.
And it was I was trying to remember, I actually was texting my parents before the interview so I could figure out the year. It may have even been the same year.
Mine was 2005.
I think it was like 2004. I couldn't even remember, so I've got my parents checking to see. It probably isn't, but anyway, we just kind of kept aligning on so many different levels. And then obviously we have the ultra running and all that in common as well. Our kids are the same age, and to be both have a better understanding of what it is that we want out of life, what are the things that are important, and how to share that. I think once you have that knowledge and once you have that level of understanding, I think that sharing it is so important. And I think that's why you're doing so much of the speaking and why these speaking engagements appeal to you and why you've done so well. I mean, if anybody gets the chance, go watch the UVU YouTube video of you speaking to that group over there. I mean, it was phenomenal. I mean, I thought I was watching a TED Talk. And that was one of the first speaking engagements that I think that you had at least recorded to put out there. Man, it's just so important to share that.
Yeah.
And when you have that vision and know that you want to share that and to be able to articulate it in a way, man, that's when I think you've made a difference in your own life. But now you've got to really a good chance to make a difference in a lot of other people's lives.
Yeah.
And that leading by example kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's been fun to be able to go out and speak and to have the reception there. And we're going to be doing a lot of videos with Altra now of more of these type of engagements. We haven't done a great job of that from a video standpoint, which has been fine. You know, it just happens.
You didn't have
it's
time.
Evolving. Yeah, I didn't have time and resources, whatever. And so we want to do a better job at Altra of telling our story.
Yeah.
And so hopefully in the next 6 to 12 months, you're going to see a bunch of videos from Altra that are more professional rather than some dude videotaping it up at the top of the auditorium at the university like I have been doing. But yeah, thank you for that. I'm glad you enjoyed that presentation. It evolves a little bit here and there, and I present differently to different people, but it's been fun. And, you know, it's been interesting, too, because for that first, 6 months after kind of coming out of, you know, that alcohol issue that I had, I was really ashamed of it, and I didn't, you know, I wasn't comfortable talking about it. And now I look back on it, and it's like, you know what, A, I was put under a pressure cooker, A, and
For
B,
sure.
nobody's perfect, and it's okay if people fail sometimes, whether it's in business or even having a personal hiccup and dealing with that. That's fine. It's life.
It's important. It's part of the process.
And I think it's helpful because I thought I was, you know, boy, this is really problematic, and this is terrible, and I'm a terrible person.
And I'm all alone.
And I'm all alone, and I start hearing it happens more than we talk about, and it's okay to talk about it. That whether you were 21 or whether you were 14 or whether you were 37 like me and started doing whatever, right? That you're not proud of, or whatever you're struggling with, whatever issues you have, that you can get through it. That people are there to help you. People understand, and it's okay to fail sometimes. And obviously, you don't want to use that as a crutch. You don't want to use that as a crutch, but hey, you can get past it. Addict to Athlete, which is a local club here that is awesome. I highly recommend them. I just did a podcast with them a couple weeks ago as well. And
shout out to those guys.
Yeah, they're awesome. One of their hashtags is "Turn Your Mess into a Message."
Nice.
And I think that's really resonated with me over the last few months as I've been able to open up about that a little bit. That, you know, I had a year that was not good, and I held it together barely from a business standpoint, and I barely held it together from a family standpoint. But I was able to rebuild and make changes, and I'm in a better place now. I'm in a healthier place mentally and physically than I was before I had that rough year. You know,
which says a lot,
and
that's the name of the game.
Yeah, it's the name of the game.
So it's all about. There's a lot of people that I really admire and look up to that have written some really great books and that have a lot of things figured out now, like you've been able to figure out. And one of the things we were talking about yesterday was I was wondering is it possible to figure these things out in life without going through some of those failures? And to a man, all these people that I admire, all these men that I look up to, men and women that I look up to and admire, they've all gone through that experience. I haven't come across one yet that hasn't had to go through some type of experience like that to get to this, I want to say, level of enlightenment, maybe, for lack of a better term. And I've begun to realize that I think that it's part of the process. You almost have to experience some of that in order to get that higher level. I don't know, but it certainly seems like it's the case. And I can tell you that all these people that I admire, they all have a similar story to what you have. And you're one of those guys that I admire. And you're right in that same vein. And that wealth of experience, I think, is going to allow you to then share it with others down the line, that it's going to help them to have their little experience too. You know, It just keeps paying it forward.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that, you know, there's successes and there's failures. And if you have a wonderful, wonderful idea, I just recommend to go for it. And, you know, there's a reason that 90% of businesses fail in the first year, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't take a shot. And I'm really happy that we took a shot, and I'm really glad that we made it. And it wasn't all genius, or definitely not genius. It wasn't even all smarts. It was probably more stubbornness and luck. But give it a shot. You know, people, you can do it. And if you fail, whether it's in a business or in life, you can always rebound. You can push forward. You learn from those mistakes. And nobody has life figured out. And the second they have life figured out, guess what?
Life does them a curveball.
Social media is going to happen. You know, I mean, you're a marketing genius in '95 doing it that same old way. I mean, I'm sorry. Life changes. The world evolves. And you got to evolve with it. And life's about improvement and change. And and learning and experiencing and failing and just, making it happen.
Yeah. We got to get it wrapped up. We've got another one of these to do, and you've been such a gracious host. I just want to ask you a couple things real quick. What's your favorite thing under $100 that you could not live without that you use on a regular basis?
Oh, man.
Cheaper the better.
You can't even get a pair of Ultras for under $100.
I know. So that takes the shoes off the table.
That I just don't think I could go without.
Yeah, it's something you can't live without.
Oh, man.
I
know exactly. We were talking about it. So I used to struggle with massive blisters.
Yes.
Massive blisters. I used to have like these terrible blisters. And it happened that Wasatch 100 that I was telling you about earlier, that was the first time I'd gone over 60 miles without blisters. And I attribute it to two things. First, Ultras. Absolutely. But second was this simple thing I found called Engo patches, ENGO. And they're $10 for a 4-pack. And they're basically a sticker that you stick on your insole, or I put it on the balls of my feet. My balls are right between my first and second met heads on the ball of my feet. Wherever, if it's on the back of your heel or if it's on your arch, wherever you blister, you stick this patch, not on your foot or the sock, but actually on the insole or the shoe. And it'll last anywhere from 200 to 300 miles typically. And it's a friction thing that it reduces all the friction at that point. And I still to this day, it's since I found Ultra and Engo patches, I can count the number of blisters I've had on one hand in the last 10 years.
Wow.
And in the last 10 years, I've run Ultra Trail Mont Blanc, Ultra Trail Mount Fuji. I've done Wasatch 100 multiple times. I've raced all around the world with Ultras and Engo patches, and they're under $10. Awesome.
Perfect.
Changed my life.
Perfect
there you
answer.
go.
So if you want to get in and run, you suffer with blisters, got any issues, check those out.
Yep, for sure.
Excellent. Good call. I always want to give people an opportunity to plug social media, any causes that they support. Obviously, we want to support this brand in any way that we can, but above and beyond Ultra, if you want to put any of your social media out there, feel free to do so. And any other causes or anything you guys got that you want to talk about?
Yeah, well, you can follow me, Instagram, Brian_Ultra. I also have a fishing account called Ultra Fishing.
Just real quick, that's how I found you. Was staring at all these giant fish on that page, man. It is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, my tagline's going the extra mile for big and beautiful fish. And I do. I'll trail run up into the mountains. I'll trail run 15, 20 miles in to get my training in for Ultras. Then I'll fish for 2-3 hours. And then I run out.
Well, you're running to wherever the big ones are.
Yes,
dude,
I do. I've got to figure it out. So that's that. And then, I just want to put another plug into Addict to Athlete. I think that me as an addictive personality, and I know I have an addictive personality, that you can erase and replace. But you do have to replace it with something. You can't just go cold turkey. It doesn't work that way, people. You have to find a healthy alternative. You have to find a replacement. And for me, I was really lucky to find exercise early in my life, and I think that saved me from a lot of issues in my teenage and college years, but then it obviously caught up to me at some point in time. So just want to put a plug into that mantra, erase and replace, and life's what you make of it, and make it good.
If you had a podcast, who would you want to interview, or who would you like to see on this podcast?
Oh, boy. Let's see. As an outdoorsman, I don't have time to do the backpacking trips that I used to, and that's kind of how I started the ultra fishing. But there's someone that he's a friend of mine, and we've never really sat down and me being able to question him. But we've hung out and done trail runs. His name's Bryce Thatcher, and he started a company called Ultimate Direction, and he coined the term in the 80s fast packing and FKTs. So fast packing was his word, and he was big into FKTs, fastest known times. And he since sold Ultimate Direction, and then a few years later started a new pack company called Ultraspire.
Nice.
And he's just a stud. He's been in the industry at the forefront of running packs and fast packing, and he's just a really, really cool dude. His name's Bryce Thatcher. I think I'll hook you up with him.
You need to
he's
hook me
super
up, dude.
cool. And he lives and is based in St. George, Utah. But he grew up in Idaho in the Tetons, so he's holds all these records that go back for 30 years up on the Tetons.
Oh, wow.
And he's just a really cool dude. And I've always been like, we've gone for a run together, but it's always in a group. I've never sat down and had a conversation with him for an hour. Got to pick his brain a little bit. And I'd love to do that, and I think you should.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny because that's why I started doing this. It's because I want to find guys and just pick their brains, because it's just so much fun to sit down with somebody like you and to get into the nuts and bolts. And we've burned up so much time, but there's really a lot more things I wanted to talk about that we're not going to get to. Last question, we'll call it a day. You've got to do all these amazing adventures and experiences. You go into Alaska on a regular basis. You've been at Mount Fuji, all these different adventure races and all these endurance races. What's one of the things on your bucket list that you want to do that you haven't had the opportunity to do yet?
The one race that has eluded me, and I've got enough tickets, it's going to happen sooner than later, and that's Western States 100. Nice. And that is, if you're not aware, that is the original 100-mile race that was used to be a horse race, and people would do it on horses. And this guy decided his horse came up lame a few days before, and he just said, screw it, I'm going to do it anyway, because he had an entry. And so he ran this 100-mile foot race. His name's Gordon Ansley. And it's started this whole phenomenon of 100-mile ultramarathons. And to bring it out, this is kind of a last little story. I want to do this race so bad, and it's going to happen in the next few years. I've got enough tickets, like it's going to happen.
When you say tickets, you mean like entries?
Yeah, it takes years to get in. It's really so hard. You got to qualify, and you got to get in. It's really, it takes like years. Boston. It's like Boston Marathon, yeah. And I met Gordon for the very first time 3 years ago. Cool. And he was wearing Ultras. And he's like 80 now. He's like in his 70s now, because this was back, he ran it in like 77 or something, like 1977. And I met him. He's an old dude at Western States. I was there pacing, and I met him, and he was wearing Ultras. And I was like, oh, yes. So anyway, that's the end. There you go.
There you go. Awesome, man. Well, hey, listen, thank you not only for your time to sit down and interview with me, but for this weekend experience and this trip, because I would not have put this trip together if you personally hadn't agreed to do this and hadn't given me this opportunity. And I will be forever into your debt for that. And if there's anything that I can do to promote these shoes and this company, not just because of you, but because of what they are and what you guys represent to the industry, just know that I got your back, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you
so much.
My pleasure,
appreciate it. All right, man. Have a good one.
You too. Cheers.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for listening. So what'd you think? What did I miss? Anything that you wanted to hear that I didn't cover? What do you want to know more about? Who would you like to see on the show? Hit us up on social media and tell me what you think. Check us out on iTunes, and please leave a review. We're now on Patreon, and your support there helps let us know we're headed in the right direction. We have a lot of exciting new things coming, fascinating guests, and some of the craziest stories you won't believe. So stay in the loop and check out more great content by subscribing at our website, 8keystoGreat.com. Special thanks to my guests and all those of you living an extraordinary life. This is Nate G. We'll see you next week.